Hey, what's up, guys? Obviously, it's Jason Myers, and I'm back. Excuse me, doing another question video or answer video, I guess, where you guys have sent me questions, over these past couple weeks, and I've been answering them, and I've enjoyed doing it. I really have, and again, I think I've said this in every fucking video so far, so you guys know, but the response has been great, and it's nice for me to actually, be able to sort of communicate in a way that's not something on a blog that you have to read, or a fucking 140 character tweet update or a Facebook status update. Since I don't do a whole lot of media appearances anymore, the chances of me meeting, most of you or any of you really. I know I met a few of you at my book release parties, that I've had in the past, but it's rare that I do readings anymore. And so, unless you come up for a book release party or one of those rare occasions that I do read, won't get a chance to ever see me read and have your questions answered in person, and this is the best that I can do. And again, it's been a blast doing it, and I really hope you guys have been taking stuff from it. At the very least, like this is the guy, like this is the asshole who writes those books. Like, man, we were expecting someone a lot cooler, a lot better looking, maybe like a little bit more fun, but you get me. Anyway, so for this particular video, I'm gonna read again. I'm gonna read the foreword to the new book because it's some of the best writing I've ever fucking done, and I mean that 100%. Sincere and genuine about that statement, and I haven't done a foreword in a book since Exit Here, and so I'm going to do a reading, and I'm also going to answer some questions. So the first question I'm going to answer is from Amy. And Amy asks, one of my favorite things about your books are the music references and the detailed descriptions of clothes. Those two things have become expected and are considered traits of yours. What made you want to bring that into your writing, and do you ever feel like it's too much or unbelievable that the characters know these bands or songs? Another great question. And to answer the first part about that, what made me want to bring that into it? Because I agree with Amy when she says it has become a trait of mine. It's definitely a stylistic, sort of association, to my writing. People have come to sort of expect that. Dead End was probably the furthest I've drifted away from any of the music and the fashion, although there was a tad bit in there, and the drugs. But what made me want to do it was, for me, what people wear, especially in the age group that I tend to write about, is what you wear is it's a personification. Says so much about you, in a very sort of generic and surface-like way. But it's also a very honest way of your representation of yourself and what you're about. And so I thought that was a great way to sort of set, instead of, I read books sometimes that bore the shit out of me, and I'm reading this writer who's like having to, tell me, these characters are about the scene, and because their dialogue's just boring shit that's not going anywhere, and they're telling it and I'm showing it. I think a description of Claire in Exit Here right away, something about her. what sort of music she's probably going to listen to, where she hangs out, who she hangs out with, and especially at that age. At that age, being a teenager, or even up to being a young adult, anywhere from like 12 to even now, who am I fucking kidding? Even now, man. Like, what we wear says a lot about who we are. And so I always thought that was a great way to really set the tone and mood of what this character, is probably going to be at least into. And I don't think it's too much at all. And I know that there's criticism of their out there about me, and saying, oh my, and then they harp on it. It's something they harp on. And I do it with multiple characters, and I do it multiple times in the book, and I enjoy it. There's part of me, the second draft for me, one of my favorite fucking parts of the entire writing process, in that second draft when I'm adding a lot of the nuances to the scenes, is to put the outfits together for the girls, and the guys too, but especially the girls. I remember when I first started at the Academy of Art in San Francisco, and the film department was in the same building as the fashion department, and I would go up there and smoke, because the fashion department was on the 8th floor right by the roof, so I'd go up to the roof to smoke during breaks, and that's because there was a lot of beautiful, pretty ladies in the fashion department that I would want to flirt with, or just, say hi to. Anyway, so when I started writing in San Francisco, and I remember I dated a couple of them during Exit Here, a couple of girls who were in the fashion program, and I just had a blast putting together the outfits and what people were wearing, and I think with a lot of the characters I've written about in the past, obviously it varies. In Exit Here, I dealt with a very sort of upper class group of kids for the most part that I was writing about, versus Run the Game, and parts of the mission where it wasn't nearly as Alexander and Patty aren't going to Patty's not going to be walking around in Jimmy Choo shoes and Chanel blouses and handbags and stuff like that. Although I'm sure when Patty ever got to New York, I bet Patty's stolen some of that shit. So mark my words on that. Yeah. So it was always just fun to put those together, and I loved it. I loved writing, the cleric character I loved because I almost described every fucking outfit that she wore at scene, and it was awesome. I love it. And part of it is me in this sort of fantasy, yeah, I guess you could say almost in this sort of fantasy sort of way of describing something that I would like to see, maybe perhaps, my girlfriend at the time wearing. Like, why are these girls in the books dressed better than you, and you're 25 and you have a real job? What the fuck? And then, I'd get a big book check, and then I'd have to go buy her shit in the book because I said that. Stupid. A side note, one time I was in this relationship, the longest one. This was one of those relationships when I thought I was actually going to go through with it and get married. Nail in the coffin right there. I was sort of in love, although, it went like another year and a half after clearly I was not in love anymore. But I had just signed a 2-book deal for Run the Game and Dead End, and it's a great little story. Sunday was a day, she was a office, went to work in an office, hated her fucking job, and, I loved my fucking life, and I was writing and fucking doing all sorts of shit, and I had 2 bands going, and I was fucking, making beats with Aesop's fucking producer, and and trying to put out a hip. I'm just having the time of my life, basically. Anyway, on Sundays we would go through the Mission, and this was before the Mission sucked like it does now. The Mission's horrible, and it's fucking bro town. It's been gentrified. All the artists, it's happening citywide, which I'm talking about in this new book a lot. If anyone saw what I posted yesterday about that sort of excerpt at San Francisco, very personal to me, even though it is a character that's not based on me by any means. Go read it. I had posted it on the Facebook and a link on Twitter. But yeah, we'd go to the Mission, start at 16th Valencia. And honestly, I hated that shit. I hated being around her at that point. So I would just hand her my fucking credit card, and I would go find the darkest fucking bar I could, and I would put $10 in, and $5 Rolling Stones, $5 fucking Mobb Deep, and or whatever, fucking NWA or Nirvana or Guns N' Roses or the Stooges or you get the fucking point. But really, Rolling Stones and Mobb fucking Deep. And I would just drink tequila, and I would partake sometimes in some nasal expeditions and some weed, and then she'd come back and she'd hand me the receipts, and I was a good boyfriend. That year I was a good boyfriend. Anyway, totally off topic. But yeah, so I've always loved doing it. As far as the bands and the music, and do I think it's too much? No, I don't. And again, I don't read bad reviews. I'll read some good reviews. I stay away from reviews mostly in general, but I know that they exist. I know that they're out there. People tell me. I mean, I'm not totally fucking immune to fucking whatever. I've come across some of them. And I know that, especially with Blaze, it really got under people's skin. That somehow Jamie fucking, knew about all these fucking indie bands. Indie bands, like, come on. It's the internet days, dude. It's whatever's on MTV is being played. Whatever's on MTV, there's another band being played on Bandcamp 1 million more fucking times being listened to, or a band's video on YouTube, and never make it onto like MTV or the radio or whatever, anything that people listen to more on YouTube. How could you know about this? And for me, it's like, how the fuck can you not? Like, it is. See, my generation, I didn't have the internet in my house. I grew up, and we didn't have the internet in my house. It was a pretty brand new thing until I was 18. Okay, so I was off to college by the time we really were well versed in the internet in the house I grew up in. And so back then it was record stores, or you'd buy music magazines, and you'd pick up a fucking payphone. Didn't have a cell phone or a house phone, and you would call the number, for an ad, or a record store in Minneapolis, and see if they had this record, or New York or Chicago or wherever, to see, usually where the label was based, to see if they had these records. And by the time I was 14, I had no internet, right? We didn't have cable TV at the house. We didn't get a satellite dish till I was 16. So at the age of 13, the summer of when I was 13, I had 2 entire walls of a room that was pretty fucking big, filled with crates of records. That NWA, 2 Live Crew, cassette tapes I would make. I remember spending a month, and I made 6 mixtapes a day, and I would rap over the instrumental sides of tapes and record that. And I am 13, growing up in a town of Dysart, Iowa, with, if you're counting cats and dogs, maybe 1,000 people, but between 800 and 900 people on a gravel fucking road. And I know every single fucking lyric to Band in the USA, to the first Chronic album, to the first two NWA fucking albums. I knew every fucking word. To Black Flag, the first 4 years. Minor Threat, Fugazi. I mean, I was fucking listening to Fugazi when I was fucking 12 years old, and from a cassette tape that I bought or ordered from Discord Records, calling on a phone, and I was 12. And so I think it's a fucking insult. And this, I don't know if this was from a review or whatnot, but somebody emailed me something in particular about, Jamie knows about all these fucking, and I just, that kind of shit just makes me want to, seriously, makes me want to vomit. I would not, that person is a miserable person, and I don't know if that person is older and has a family, or she's my age, or she's younger, but what a miserable person. The question now isn't, how could you know about this? It's why don't you? If you're into something, you're passionate. Jamie's a musical protege. He is a musical protege. He has been playing piano from the age of 5 and guitar from the age of 5. He knows how to play these instruments. It is his life. Art is that family, especially that house in Joliet where he lives with his mom. It is only art. Passionate. His mom has an extensive record collection. His mom takes him record shopping. He knows about this stuff. Music is what he wants to do. He doesn't want to go to college despite how good his grades are, and about, even with all the reading he does, the intellectual curiosity that seems to sort of expound into every fucking, facet of his life. He wants to be a musician. And so, of course he knows. This is the age where this will be up on the internet in 10 minutes after I'm done doing it. So if this was me recording a fucking song, it could be on a Bandcamp page, and somebody's cousin who his roommate works for Pitchfork might see this, and I could be, that's how accessible and easy this stuff is nowadays. And so to sit there and say that there's no way Jamie would fucking know this stuff, it's just so ignorant, and it really just, it really just makes me wonder, why someone like that would want to review my book or even write it. I mean, just don't fucking read it. That's why you can't read that kind of stuff. You can't read the reviews, whether they're good or bad, I mean, obviously the good ones, feel nice, but the bad ones, I don't like shit. There's stuff I don't like. I don't like Macklemore, and I say something about that in the book. I don't like him, but would never make a review saying Macklemore can't rap. The guy can rap. The guy has skills, rapping skills. I just don't enjoy the music that he puts out. Just like he doesn't have, if he read my stuff, he wouldn't, if he didn't like it, then that's fine. But I would hope that Macklemore say Jason Myers, has no writing skills or something like that, to come at me in a way that I have something, I'm not this amazing, crazy, my books are flying off the shelves, fucking famous author. I'm the farthest thing from that. But I've had 5 book deals, and I've had 5 novels published, and my books have sold, close to 200,000 copies around the world total. And so I think, I got off topic there a little bit, but going back to that, no, it's not too much. The question would, the sort of, it would be why wouldn't Jamie know about it? I'd be pissed that Jamie wouldn't know about it if this is what he's interested in doing, and this is what he wants to become, a musician. And fuck, you have Wikipedia, just like today I was listening to Pandora. I was listening to the M83 Pandora station, and then I turned it to the Kanye Pandora station, and then I went to the OC's Pandora station, and I heard at least 7 songs by musicians and artists that I had never heard of before. That's how fucking easy it is, okay? So, yeah, I never think it's, what did it say? I don't think it's, too unbelievable or anything like that. And as far as the outfits, if people think that's too much, well, good for them. I like it. I enjoy it. I'm not going to stop doing it. And it has become a trait of mine. And yeah, it's fucking fun. And you know what? People should fucking take sort of some pride in their appearance. The characters that I write about, at least for the most part, when you see that happening a lot, are characters who take pride in their appearance. It is about an image. It is about something that they're trying to say. It is a personification. It says something about you to the fucking world. So that's my answer to that. And then I wanted to go to another question, and this is from Gianna, and Gianna seems like a rad person. I've had some back and forth with her on the Twitter, and she asked, she's kind of the one who got me thinking about doing this, so thank you, Gianna. And she wanted to know, I think I talked about the zone on the first video, but if I didn't, and I'll go back and watch it, and I'll come back to that. But she also wanted to know, how did I start writing and what my muse was, and I think I touched a little bit too on why I started writing. I think I touched on that a little bit, but part of it was, once I really realized, I think there was a disconnect so long, like there is with a lot of kids being taught in our in schools, public education system, who are just naturally just associate writing with the shit that they have to read in school. So like you're reading, Greek mythology books and sort of classical literature that it's hard to get through, because it's fucking hard to get there. Writing's evolved all the way to the simplicity that I do it with, although it's not as simple as some people think, and I'll touch on that, because I think a lot of people think that what I do is really simple, and the way I write is the way I tell a story to somebody if I was talking to you, but I don't know if any of you have tried, but I had a great back and forth email with a kid who had basically tried to emulate my style, and found out that there's a lot more going on than just what appears. But how I got into it, was going into Exit Here. I did tell that story about how there was something there. I was going to do a short film that turned into the short story that I kept going with Exit Here. And Exit Here too also at some point became what I wanted. Was I was paying homage to Bret Easton Ellis in that book. It was an updated version in Lesson Zero, and that's another thing too, and I know that criticism has been out there for years on me, saying that I ripped him off and that thought that I was getting away with ripping him off, when the press release for Exit Here that I personally okayed and told them to include was this modern day version of Less Than Zero. I have not run from that. I wanted to make an updated version of Less Than Zero once Exit Here started going, and once I started enjoying writing that. That was my plan. I wanted to make an updated version of that book. And Ellis knows about this, and so when people sit there and say like, "Oh yeah, he ripped off Ellis," and no one thought he would, no one thought he was doing it, I admit it. It was in the press release that I okayed. You fucking morons, you fucking idiots. It was fucking me who fucking told them to include modern day Lesson Zero and okayed the press release before the book came out. I was paying homage to that book, and I thought I really wanted to do an updated version of that. And the books, while the premise of the books are fucking, completely fucking similar. You know, Clay comes back for Christmas break in Lesson Zero. Travis comes home from you know, his first year away. They're very removed from everyone. They're very distant, and you know, that was, you know, they're both come from very large or wealthy families, and was the fucking point. And but the difference in the book was that Ellis Lesson Zero was the satire on you know, sort of that generation's apathy, and L.A. L.A. was a setting. L.A. was a character in the book. It was a fucking character, and it was a satire on this more of a generation of excess in the 80s and material things, whereas Exit Here was satirical in the essence of the point I was trying to prove was the destruction that those who have the power, the wealth, the money can get away with. And if you don't have a moral compass, then, you know, the destruction that you do, there's no justice for that. That was one of the big themes. And so where Lesson Zero was this broader sort of story of, yes, teenagers, but it was a generational story more, and about that generation in LA, just, you know, LA fucking basically personified those characteristics, whereas actually here Travis had a story, you know. There was a character arc in Travis, you know, and that was sort of it. Travis was a symbol of excess wealth, power. I can do whatever I want, but at some point, you know, you get to that place where, you know, you no longer, if you have everything you want, you do anything you want, and you're starting to hurt people, intentionally or not, like, at some point, you have to reconcile that you have to reconcile that with inside yourself. You have to. Otherwise, I mean, if you ever want to even think about being happy again, and that's what his whole journey is about, and it's about that notion that, you know, before this whole thing got out of control, before that attitude of his really got out of control and took a fucking turn, it was he didn't appreciate anything he had. And so you see him, and the whole time when he's back, is he's trying to get back everything he's trying to avoid that reconciliation so much that he's looking at sort of very, not meaningless, but very superficial ways of trying to make himself have a reconciliation with that, and very superficially. If I could just get everything back the way it was before I left, then I'll be okay. It's not how it works. We're taking responsibility and accepting it is the only way that works. And in Travis, everything was extreme, and that was the extreme version. And when I was writing that, with what I had seen going on, you know, Enron stuff had just happened, and we had just gone into Afghanistan, and we were, you know, about to go into Iraq when I was first working on that, you know. And it's like there was this sort of thing in me, these rich, powerful people are just destroying people's lives because at the end of the day, they had the power. And, you know, for me, I looked at sort of America, we were so wounded, and it was post 9/11. Those first couple years it was just very interesting. You know, people, there was a closeness, but also a real sense of detachment, and a real sense of like, this could happen again. We could be dead. I mean, we were that vulnerable. And so that was the sort of the representation of his friends, you know, Travis, knowing that I could do this to my friends, you know. This happened in Hawaii. This could happen. I'm looking at Cliff, and fucking, like, I'm almost culpable of what happened between him and Laura, you know, like. And so, yeah, like, that the two books were completely different in that aspect. The premises were the same, not the same, but the premises were very close. And once again, Brett Easton Ellis knows about Exit Here. I don't know if he's read it, but there's been communication about it, and he doesn't give a shit. I mean, Bret Easton Ellis ripped off Joan Didion's Play It As It Lays. The premise, nearly almost everything. The premise, characters were different. And so I just get a kick out of it when people are like, "Oh, and he was trying to pull fast." No, I wasn't. Like, go into my websites. I mean, God, it's when I talked. I think the first 2-3 years I spent after X Year came out was me talking about how big of an impact Lesson Zero was and how I wanted to make an updated version of it. Anyway, my muses. My muses change from, obviously, from book to book. I think they play a very, first of all, they play a very important role in my creative process, and I know I talked about how this book deals a lot with that. And they change for each book. If I had any sort of general muses that like I follow or that influenced me throughout all my books is the alienated sort of the alienation among young people, and the rebellion against sort of consumer culture, even though you were a part of the consumer culture, even though these characters might like trying to look a certain way and dress a certain way, but at the same time there's a fuck you to consumer culture, because this consumerism, because we know we're gonna make our own clothes, or we're gonna fucking put out our own music. That's a sort of fight back. But in general, like, I've always definitely, even Exit Here, those were a lot of them were the popular, cool, rich kids, but at the same time, they were definitely the underdogs in a lot of senses, in the sense of them being individuals, and having to trying to step away from everything that was expected from them. So I think a general theme is, I write for those kids, or I write for people who, feel alienation and don't feel part of anything, or feel like they don't have, anyone listening to them, or feel like no one's telling their stories. So that's a big part of it. Specifically, muses, Dead End. The muse was this girl that I was with for a long time, and I had never felt like that for a girl ever. Like, I fell madly in love, and that was the one that, there was that sort of marital consideration for a while. And so Drew and Gina were able to, pull a lot of that. I was able to use that relationship to pull a lot of emotion between those two in the book. That was a muse. And then, there was also too that idea of, power versus the powerless, and unfortunately, power often wins out more than anything. Corruption wins out more than anything. With the mission, it was that sort of debaucherous lifestyle, but the muse too, part of it was San Francisco, for me. And then there was the whole sort of James Morgan was always, it was like a sort of young Jason versus a young Jason who had wanted to be a certain way when he was young, and then an older Jason who had wanted to be a certain way when he was older. So when I was younger, I had a lot of similar traits to Cade, but Cade would have been like the kid that I wanted to be. I thought he was a little tougher, a little, I probably had a better record collection and tape collection, and I was getting the first and second base with chicks, and I was 13, 14, so I had that on him. I'm bragging. But but there was parts of it that like I just I thought that that would have been something that when I was 13 going, like, if I would have seen someone who kind of had that style, I would have been like, oh yeah, I wish I was that. And then James Morgan was when Exit Here had been published, I'd always had this vision in my head of who I wanted to be as a writer. And my ego had gotten big. Exit Here, just the way Exit Here blew up out of nowhere. And it went from people trashing it, the people who could find it, and couldn't find it anywhere for the first years out, the people who could find it, to just total trashing it and whatnot. Then all of a sudden it exploded, and all of a sudden, it's being labeled as a sort of generation, one of those generation-defining books. And it's like, I'm getting, being requested for media appearances, and people want me on their radio shows, and I did some of that, and I realized I didn't really like doing a lot of that stuff, because my books are very personal to me. Like, I know I'm broadcasting this to the world, but this is much more intimate, and I feel like I'm talking directly to the fans who give a shit. I doubt a lot of people push on it. Like, I have my core fans. My books sell well, but I don't have this, like, major, like, fan, just pockets of loyal fans that I love to death, and I just I don't like doing them because the questions always seem to be more of an attack on me, and it's personal, and I defend my book. I will defend my art, till my last breath. But I just started being like, fuck you guys, and what I'm talking about specifically, I guess, is people who, hated me or hated the fact that they thought I was glorifying drugs, and that, I found it acceptable to be junkies and for people to turn into junkies, and that, that the big moral sort of conclusion of my stories, or the endings, never involved people just denouncing all of that, and my answer always be, because that's just not the way I've seen it and the way it works for me, and it's not what I do. I know that people read that link of the new thing that I had written and posted last night. And my friend that day this week, it was like, yeah, man, I'll let that guy on my floor for 10 days. Like, I was in a cab, a fucking taxi cab, and I hadn't seen him in like 8 months, and the cab almost hit him. And I was like, what the fuck are you? I had the cab pull over, and then I gave him my floor for 10 days, so at least he had a roof that he could get fucking high in, and fucking, eventually, like, I was like, dude, you gotta leave, man. Like, I'm just like, you're gonna have to figure this one out, dude. You have to figure this out. You're an adult now. But he was here. I was working on one of the drafts of the mission, and I miss him a lot. Like, it was tough losing him, and it was unexpected, and there was, like, he had this really awesome band that had a great EP, and I really enjoyed it. And I remember I was working on one of the drafts in the mission, and it was during those 10 days that he was here, and I'd write, and I'd bounce ideas off of him, and then he'd come back and bounce them off me, and it was cool and whatnot. I don't fucking know what I'm talking about right now. Muses, yeah. Anyway, and then for Run the Game, I think for me it was, I wanted just to write about fucking rad kids who had this scene in some these towns that fucking people just forget about, and the manufacturing leaves, and become ghost towns where no one cares, and just want to write about some fucking, yeah, they're fucking doing drugs, whatever, prostitution. I mean, like, I'm not cheerleading these things on, but I didn't make this up. I didn't make up teenage drug addiction. I didn't make up teenage prostitution. But I put I think, a nice human face on it. I mean, Alexander's a fucking sweetheart. He's an asshole and he's selfish, but he's also a fucking sweetheart, you know? And, you know, I wanted to write a scene about these fucking rock kids, man. These fucking hipster rock kids in this little fucking town making an art scene, you know? And what happens when dreams become something that you don't pursue, but you're not pursuing the dream anymore. You're already imagining yourself living it, and that's what Alexander was doing. And that sort of drifting from reality was one of his big downfalls. And Blazed, you know, there was a girl, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I was really excited. I had started seeing somebody, so Blaze had nothing to do with her, as far as like story wise, but you know, there was an energy there that I was writing with, because there's nothing better than those, like, well, I shouldn't say that, but you know, those first 2-3 weeks of relationship are so fucking beautiful and rad, and you know, that's when both of you see no imperfections and anything. So I'm going to read that. I hope that answered some of your questions the best I could. I'm going to read that forward, but my phone is about to die, so that will be the next video. Okay, I love you guys. Sweet. Bye.